The moratorium on foreclosures ended on July 30th, and there's a lot of buzz, a lot of talk about how that's going to affect the foreclosure and forbearance market and the short sales. We don't want anybody to go into a foreclosure or short sale, but there is a certain amount of inventory that's not on the market because that moratorium was in sale. Not the foreclosure, but before it gets to foreclosure, people just can't afford their home and they sell their home. So understanding how that inventory will, hit the market and how we will be able to take advantage of some of those opportunities that are out there and also get some relief for buyers. There's more houses, the prices go down, and we can get a fairer deal. There's still opportunities out there. There's still possibilities where you can get the home of your dreams, your forever home, or build a new construction home and get a good price at it. You just need to have a good team behind you and the right people to represent you so that you can get your offer accepted and you can get a good deal. This episode is brought to you by HomeWire.com. Missy Buttrum over at HomeWire has access to a unique inventory. They purchase homes off market and give that inventory to their customers first before it hits MLS, giving you a unique opportunity to get a home that other people may not have the chance to. Click on the link below to learn how Missy and her team can help you get your offer accepted and get that home that you've been looking for. Missy, Kris, and Al are going to join us today, and we're going to talk about foreclosures and short sales, when they're going to hit the market, how that's going to affect the inventory, and what you can look out for so you can get a good deal and avoid some of the pitfalls. So let's get started with Missy and Kris Buttrum from HomeWire.com.
Welcome to the Offer Accepted Show. I'm Missy, and today we have Kris Buttrum, my partner in crime and husband.
Hello.
We're going to talk about short sales and foreclosures today. Kris, tell us what a short sale is.
Well, Missy, a short sale is when you have little to no equity in your house and you decide that you're going to sell it. Basically, you owe more than what your house is worth after commission and transaction fees.
Okay, so how is that different from a foreclosure? Because these words get thrown around a lot in our market.
And they do, very much so. So there's a few different processes in the foreclosure arena. One is a lot of times the client or the person getting the foreclosure, they're getting notices. So they're getting stuff from the courts, they're getting stuff from the banks, they're getting all these nasty letters that are compiling up into stacks, and a lot of times a lot of people are ignoring those letters. So when they ignore them so long, there's only so long that a bank will go before they start the foreclosure process. So foreclosures can go up to 3 to 5 years. Sometimes I've seen them up even longer than that. It's a very long, drawn-out process. Sometimes a bank can decide that they can take a property as little as 120 days.
Yes, we've both seen that.
Yes.
For sure. Now, the burning question with the moratorium ending on July 31st, what do you think is going to happen with short sales, foreclosures? Are they going to bring more inventory, and how quick?
Sure. So that is a question that everybody is asking right now. And banks are being very proactive right now. They're already deploying letters out to their clients, to their borrowers, asking what the borrower wants as far as, are they looking to sell their house? Are they looking to catch up? Are they willing to do a loan modification? These banks are being very proactive right now. So I think that with them being proactive, right now, at the current moment, you're not going to see a huge influx of foreclosures. I think the banks are learning from their past and going forward. But it's going to be up to the individual, the borrower, to be proactive with these letters and answering phone calls. And that's going to be the main gist of it is if they're proactive, they get a hold of the bank, they're not shy, they're not scared. The banks are not what they call evil, right? So like, just answer the phone.
They want to work with you.
Right,
Yes.
they do. They do not want your house back as much as people think they do.
So if these people do foreclose, what do you think the timeline is going to be on getting some more inventory?
I think it'll be about 2 to 3 years before we see inventory of any sort. The first inventory that you will see will be the non-owner occupied, the landlords that cannot go any further because they did not get any rent money. Their taxes are piling up. There's no remorse on a small landlord, and it will be noticed as a lot of these landlords are already falling behind. They have no means to pay the rent because, or their mortgage because the renters are not paying them. They're trashing the houses. Water bills are compiling, taxes are compiling, and there's really no sense of urgency from the renters right now to pay their landlord.
And that is an excellent point to make. We did have an episode about investment properties and how there's going to be more of those coming out, and we've seen more of those this summer coming out, and that's a big part of it. Not just retiring, landlords just can't deal with not getting that income. So very good point to make. So there's that with the investment properties, but what about regular residential? We like to give some hope to all these home buyers and millennials that there's going to be more inventory for them. What are your thoughts with the residential?
Sure. So I believe that the residential is about 2 years out as far as any kind of foreclosures. And let's keep in mind that, we don't hope anybody to ever foreclose on a property because it's a very sad situation. But when it does, and when the banks give opportunities for these borrowers to actually do loan modifications, they're going to have a grace period. They're going to be able to take any arrears that they had and compile it into a very low interest up to 40 years. And they actually just announced that FHA did that they're going to give borrowers, up to 40 years to pay back their mortgage. So if they do that, it'll be a win-win for the borrower and a win-win for the banks. But knowing where this all goes, unfortunately, people are not proactive sometimes, like in a divorce situation, a death situation, or very other depressing situations. If somebody's out of a job, they won't be able to do a loan modification. They just won't. They have to still qualify just as if they were getting a regular bank loan. So I say it's going to probably be 2 to 3 years before we actually see foreclosures coming into market.
So you mentioned loan modification. Can you tell us more about that and how that affects a borrower?
So Missy, what a loan modification is your total balance plus any arrears that you've had with a mortgage. So what these borrowers are seeing is they're seeing statements that are pretty scary. If somebody, let's say, owed $100,000 and they were behind for 18 months, it's not only showing the $100,000 for the principal, but it's also showing maybe another $26,000 in principal and interest. So now that borrower actually owns $126,000, and because they felt behind, they're in a dark situation where they're, how do we get rid of this, or what do we do? They just throw their hands up. But what the bank will do when these borrowers actually start communicating, and it's a lot of work. It's a packet. They're going to fill out everything, where they're working and everything. And they're going to get a snapshot. The bank's going to get a snapshot of what they're doing. And what the lender will do for them in most cases is they'll take that balance, the $26,000 in arrears, and they'll put in the back of the loan. So what we'll realize is somebody may get a 40-year mortgage and be responsible on year 41 for that $26,000 in arrears or whatever that may be. So they really put it out there in a successful plan so that the borrower can get.
Thank you, Kris from HomeWire and Cell 911 for being here with me today to help explain that more.
Absolutely.
I like to share a success story kind of off the cuff about actually Kris and I with a mutual client of ours back in, oh geez, when foreclosures were a big part of our inventory. We had a client named Barb who bought one of our foreclosure listings. She's been continued to be a great referral source, and now a success story is her daughter was looking for a home, and we had probably been looking for 2 years on and off with her, and we got an offer accepted in July, and there'll be work moving in this month in August. So another great success story of offers getting accepted.
The forbearance moratorium was over at the beginning of the month. And, I think that there's some people who think that the market's just going to be flooded with foreclosures. But it's a little bit different than that because this is in 2007. Can you tell us what does the moratorium mean and how is that going to affect the market?
Missy reported about 90% of the homes in forbearance, there's only 10% that still remain in there. So that's actually a really good number. Now, breaking these numbers down a little bit more, the news from the Mortgage Bankers Association, this number is decreasing over the last 21 weeks. So this is very good news, meaning that more and more people that were taking advantage of the forbearance are getting themselves out of it. So really going deep into the numbers, of the 10%, 2% are Fannie Mae, your Freddie Mac type of loans. Another 4% is your government loans, and the rest are portfolio loans. So more and more people are starting to get themselves out of forbearance, kind of get back into the rhythm of making the mortgage payments again.
And with the forbearance moratorium, what that did, can you tell us a little bit about how that affected the number of homes that were for sale on the market?
When you take a look at a source for the forbearance, if one wasn't able to make the payments, they were able to come up with a couple different options as far as for either having the payments on hold, taking the interest, taking the payments, throwing it on back of the loan, allowing people to get caught up or have a stay and get their budget stabilized. So with the moratorium stopping, it allows people, in essence, either are we going to be able to make it or are we going to be able to put the home on the market?
When the moratorium is up, it's not like if people were past due for a few months or past due for any amount of time. For most of the banks, they don't demand that all at once. They're putting they're renegotiating the loans. How does that look?
Correct. Every bank was a little bit different as far as what they were able to offer. And the last thing a bank wants to do is foreclose on a home. So since they're giving customers different options and different payment plans as far as for getting themselves caught up, whether it be taking the interest, taking the payments, throwing it on the back of the loan, maybe possibly taking a look at a refinance. So there's a lot of different options customers have if they still want to stay in their home and if they're still willing to work with the bank. I do believe they can pull themselves out of it.
And the forbearance moratorium, maybe you could expand a little bit about with that moratorium in place, houses that normally would come on the market because people are having trouble paying for them, that forbearance kind of squashed that down, which reduced the number of inventory. Now, is that going to immediately affect the market, or when will we really see a shift in the market? Is it September, November, next year?
With only 10% of the ones in being forbearance, it'll be interesting to see how many of those are able to pull themselves out of it. I would say probably over the next couple months, if there's ones that are like, you know what, we're just not able to make it, we can't do anything at all, and if they completely give up and walk away from it, we're probably going to see that towards later fall, middle of winter.
And that's when more houses will come on the market just because people can't afford them, not necessarily a foreclosure or a short sale.
Correct.
Okay. So when people are looking for, some people are saying, well, the foreclosure and short sale is coming. Can you just get a regular Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac mortgage for a foreclosure or an FHA, or do they need cash? How does that look?
Great question. As far as for if you are a buyer and taking a look at getting into a short sale purchase, getting into a foreclosure, the same rules still apply. The house still has to meet the collateral requirements. You yourself have to still meet all as far as the credit, down payment, and in addition to the income requirements as well. The biggest thing when we take a look at as far as foreclosures, you want to get the water on, get the electric on, get the heat on, know what you're buying as far as for the condition of the house. You don't want to walk into your brand new house with the keys as far as you completely having ownership of it, and then all of a sudden you turn the water on and you have water running everywhere where it shouldn't be. We don't want that to happen at all.
Yeah, that could be a problem. And the banks will give you a loan for a foreclosure. Does the bank selling it want a mortgage, or do they want a cash buyer?
At the end of the day, the banks want to keep moving the homes. So in essence, they're going to take a look at the highest and best offer. A lot of times if there's any issues with the house, some may work with you to get it fixed. Some just want it completely gone. So in that case, a lot of times cash buyers are more favorable because they know we're not going to have to worry about fixing anything at all.
It's easier with you don't have to go through all the steps in the process. With the news of the forbearance moratorium expiring earlier this month, I think we should talk about what kind of challenges people could run into with foreclosure, with short sale. It seems like there's going to be a lot of deal getters out there, wanting to really, see if there's opportunities. But I think there's going to be some pitfalls too.
There are going to be some pitfalls, and foreclosure is one of those situations where you hear the one story about the one friend of a friend who bought a house in a foreclosure and it was amazing, and they put a couple of coats of paint on it, and now it's worth $200,000 more than it was when they bought it, and it's been great, so we should all go buy a foreclosure. And it's a lot more complicated than that, John.
I bet. So what are some of the pitfalls that we can run into we'll talk about short sales and foreclosures, but let's start with foreclosure.
Yeah, well, foreclosure is kind of the end of the process. It's when the case, what a foreclosure is a foreclosure is a legal case. So the case has actually gone in front of a judge into a court, and the court has foreclosed on the mortgage. The court has said, you have officially violated the terms of this mortgage, you have defaulted, and now the court is going to force the sale, a sheriff's sale of the property. So what the problems we see are really many. First of all, the condition of the property is always suspect when it's coming out of a foreclosure. So my advice to people is, if you are going to dabble in this, get an inspection, know what you're dealing with, know the neighborhood, know everything, because the bank has no information about this property and no incentive to advise you about this property. And the person who was originally the owner is out of the picture or on their way out of the picture, and frankly, unlikely to have been taking very good care of this house. So that's the first concern we have. And then the next major concern is we want to have a good understanding of, when you buy from a foreclosure, what obligations are you taking on? Are you taking on back due taxes? Are you going to take on a sewer assessment that just went through? You want to know exactly what's on the table as far as what you're purchasing, because that's going to affect it. And you can bet that bank wants to offload as much of that onto you as possible. And that's part of the deal. That's part of why we pay less when we buy at a foreclosure. But you want to have a very clear picture of what you're getting and what you're not getting in that transaction.
That's a very good point. And when Kris was here earlier, we talked about buying a foreclosure and what financing could look like. And it sounds like you're going to need some bigger reserves if you go into that foreclosure market, because there may be a lien or a tax lien. Is that attached to the title too?
It often is, yes. Mm-hmm. And it's something that's going to be in the papers. But as I keep harping on, we got to have somebody look at these papers, because there are going to be things that are buried in those papers that don't look like a big deal. And you're going to look back and say, oh boy, I should have really looked at this section with a professional. So yeah, you're going to need reserves, and you're going to need a real clear understanding of what's going to be expected.
It's going to be really important to have your team aligned so that you're protected. You can get the good deal. You can be that person who makes $200,000 with a couple coats of paint. But you need your team aligned so that you can make sure that you get a good property. Now, before it hits foreclosure, there's an opportunity for a short sale. And tell us a little bit about what a short sale is.
Sure. So what a short sale is a short sale is an arrangement between the bank and a defaulted mortgagor. So the person who's taken out the mortgage in the first place to buy a house isn't meeting their obligations, and they are going to make an arrangement with the bank where they're going to sell this place without the bank having to go through the full short foreclosure process. So that's the short sale process. We're kind of in between. Things have already defaulted, but we haven't gone all the way to a sheriff's sale. So the bank and the original owner and the new buyer are all going to work together to do this thing called a short sale.
And we're gonna with the short sale. That's what we're gonna see first, especially with this forbearance moratorium.
Yes.
Stopping, the short sales are gonna be the first thing out.
Correct, because what you're going to see is you're going to see a flood of foreclosures and evictions hitting the courts, and it's going to take a long time to process all these things because, under Wisconsin law and under federal law, there are these time delays that people have, that they have rights to stay a certain amount of time after default, and a lot of those clocks are just going to start running right now. So in the meantime, there are going to be some opportunities for people to sell at short sale, and people might wonder, well, why would you do that? And a big part of that is because if you sell at the short sale, a lot of time the bank will waive any of the other claims against this person who has defaulted. They'll say basically, if you work with us and get rid of this place, we're not coming after you for anything else. Mm-hmm. So everyone walks away with a little cleaner hands. The bank spends a lot less money and a lot less time in court. The original owner can get out of there clean, and the new buyer might get a good deal out of the process too.
Are some of the pitfalls or challenges that we're looking at in foreclosure the same for a short sale?
They are. It's really the same situation, not quite as deteriorated. So you're definitely going to want to get an inspection. Understand that bank and that original owner have every incentive to get you to like this place and buy it. So it's your job to protect yourself and go get it inspected and go look at make sure the title's clean, make sure there's, who owns the place. Nobody on the other side is really worried about your best interest. They're trying to offload this house.
And with this moratorium and other moratoriums expiring, there are going to be some new things that kind of get on the title and new processes that we should really have our team aligned so that we make sure that we can check for them.
Absolutely. We might have, there might be a lease where the real owner who's in default isn't the person who's living there. And we got a person who's living there under a lease, and we got to make sure we understand how long they have the right to live there. Do we have a foreclosure and an eviction that's going to happen in the same place at the same time? That's a legal mess. It's sort outable, but it's a legal mess you're going to want to understand before you dive in as the new landlord/owner.
Yeah, and both of those are expiring in this time. The forbearance just expired and the eviction is on its way. So there are some new challenges. Thank you so much. This was very useful in helping us understand the difference between the short sale and the foreclosure and what we should look out for.
Yep, it's a brave new world out there, but there are some opportunities if you know what you're doing.
Having a team behind you to make sure that you don't fall into some of these pitfalls and some of these traps that can happen with a foreclosure. I wasn't aware that you could just get a loan for a foreclosure. I thought you had to be a cash buyer, one of these flippers that you see on TV. So understanding how financing works, some of the things that we should look out for has really been helpful. Join us each week on the Offer Accepted Show, a show for home buyers in a seller's market. We're going to give you insight and tools on how the Fed is affecting the rates, what's happening in the mortgage industry, and what houses are selling and what the inventory is. Join us every Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the Offer Accepted Show, a show for home buyers in a seller's market. See you next week.